All right. Well, we're live and we've got slides. So, Gordon, do you want to start us off?
Yes, 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I appreciate you taking some time on a beautiful Monday evening in July. There are only 2 village board members present, so we actually are not considering this as a board meeting. This is the first of 2 planned public informational meetings with respect to the draft comprehensive plan. The second meeting will be in mid-August. We'll be holding that one in person at the Trumansburg Farmers Market with a rain backup site at the Trumansburg, I believe, Elementary School auditorium. We'll be confirming that as we get closer. So the purpose of the meeting is to go through some information, kind of how we got here, where we're at, and then get into some details with respect to what the draft comprehensive plan actually includes, what the findings of the almost 3 years worth of work at this point, what those findings have led to, and then take public comment or any questions or comments from anyone here in attendance. We are live streaming this to YouTube so that folks who either can't make it tonight can watch at some later date, or we do have the occasional individual or folks who like to watch from a distance and rather than join in via Zoom. So the slideshow presentation that we have is kind of just a brief, as I say, a high glossy overview, if you will, of where we've come from and where we are today. I think, Ben, you have slide control, yes. So we're hoping to keep the slideshow itself, relatively concise. We have left quite a bit of time for question and answer. We are a small group, so please don't leave any questions unasked. That would defeat the purpose of the evening. Where we began was really 2018, midsummer of 2018. I initiated the formation of what has come to be known as the CPZR, the Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Revision Committee. The purpose of that committee really came about as part of the aftermath, I suppose you could say, of questions, comments, some controversy that came out of a proposed private development that we're all aware of and familiar with at 46 South Street. That is a vacant parcel of land where a private developer had purchased it and was seeking to build many units of various types. So that led to I think a lot of folks who had not previously thought about the comprehensive plan or looked into it very much, certainly a lot of folks who had never taken a dive into zoning, they got to become familiar with all that entails. This then led to a lot of questions about, well, why does the comprehensive plan say this? Shouldn't the comprehensive plan say that? And I was curious myself. Our first comprehensive plan was adopted in 2008. Based on surveys and public input over the previous 2 to 3 years. So we're really talking about, by 2018, at least 10, possibly 12 to 13-year-old set of information. So I wanted to see, has the community changed? What has changed? I mean, things are never 100% static. So there was the assumption that there had been some change over time, and I wanted to really see where we stood as far as that goes. On top of that, New York State, although they don't technically mandate in the legal sense that a comprehensive plan be adopted, it is considered a best practice, and many a court case has upheld a best practice of, if you do adopt a comprehensive plan, then A, your zoning should be based off of that, and B, your comprehensive plan should be reviewed at least no less than every 10 years and preferably more often. As we see, that's a pretty heavy lift, considering that it takes 2 to 3 years just to review a comprehensive plan. So I don't know if New York State has envisioned an ongoing, never-ending review process. Maybe comprehensive plans are living documents. But in any event, in 2018, I commissioned this committee, formed of at least one member from each of the 3 village boards. So we have the village board itself, the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, as well as a number of members of the community. The next slide, if you would, Ben. The kind of the overriding question of what does a comprehensive plan do for you? You know, why do we need to revise it? Why do we need to review it? Is to maintain a sense of what the community wants, what the community's desires are, what the community's hopes are for the future of the community with respect to things like housing and development or lack thereof. It is part of that revisiting or revising of that community-wide vision that allows us to develop future action plans, not just to update our zoning, which is really where the legal teeth are, so to speak. But zoning can be very dry. Zoning can be, you know, do we have 5-foot setbacks or 8-foot setbacks from the rear property line of a garage? You know, that's very dry, kind of wonky stuff. But it all plays into this idea of what is the vision of the community? What do we want Trumansburg to look like, both in the short term and in the long term? And when we start to think about many decades from now, you know, 20, 25, 30 years from now, the shape or the form that Trumansburg will be or take at that time really starts with the decisions that we make now, particularly with respect to zoning. So we reflect back to that 2017, 2018 timeframe when there was a lot of questions and some controversy about who should be allowed to build what where. That was decided based upon zoning that was adopted in 2012. So the decisions that we make now have ramifications 5, 10, 15 years in the future. And in order to craft that, we need to have a comprehensive plan that accurately reflects what the desires are of the community, at least at this snapshot in time. When we complete an update of a comprehensive plan, a lot of things can happen. Number one, it does, as I say, allow us to revise our zoning. Any concerns or controversies or challenges to any part of the zoning, New York State courts will typically look at the comprehensive plan and say, does this piece of law in the form of the zoning adhere to or stay, or is it in line with what was stated as the community's desires in the comprehensive plan? So it's important that we have an updated comprehensive plan before we make or even consider any potential zoning changes. In addition to that, when we start looking at things like applying for grant funding, whether that grant funding is for the purpose of stormwater remediation, water and sewer systems, sidewalk infrastructure, new sidewalks, most of those grants, particularly anything administered through New York State, most of those grants are going to look at, does this application, does this request for money and the project that the money will fund, is it in line with the comprehensive plan of this municipality? If, wild example, if a municipality was, say, spread out over a large area and didn't have any walkability, and they applied for a grant for sidewalks, the grant folks might very well say, well, the comprehensive plan doesn't seem to reflect a need for people to walk. Conversely, in Trumansburg, where our 2008, and again, you'll see in the draft document tonight, our draft comprehensive plan emphasizes the importance of walkability. That then helps when we start looking at things like roadway improvements to improve pedestrian safety, sidewalks, and so forth. These funding sources, whether it be New York State or federal grants, occasionally you'll see corporations and not-for-profits involved. You know, they all look at, does this make sense for the community? And of course, when you're talking about a third party who really doesn't know our community, how will they know whether something fits our community? They will refer to our comprehensive plan because it's what our community put together. Comprehensive plan addresses both challenges and opportunities. So when we take a look at any snapshot in time, and whenever one is doing any kind of planning, whether it's on the personal side of things, the business side of things, or in a community and municipality, we're taking a snapshot in time and treating it something like a roadmap. Here's where we are. Where would we like to get? And how do we think we can get there? What is either the most expeditious route to that goal? It could be what is the safest route to that goal. It could be what is the least expensive route to that goal. It's very much in the pre-GPS days when we actually used roadmaps and had to figure out a way to try to fold them back up and get them back in the glove box. It's that sense of you are here and here's where we want to get. And knowing that we'll find detours along the way, we can at least begin to construct a plan. So when we look at that snapshot in time, we have to look at what are the current challenges to the community? What do we lack? Sidewalks always come to mind. Folks love the walkability of Trumansburg, but not all sidewalks are created equal, unfortunately, in the village. And then we also have to look at things like our water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, which have both been vastly improved over the last few years. How do we make that sustainable? How do we plan for repairs in the long term? We look at those community needs. We look at areas for capital improvement. And then that then leads to, is it purely a function of we need more money and where do we apply for that money to make these improvements? Or are there things that we need to do from a legal or legislative point of view to make those things happen? Do we need to amend zoning to reflect a particular desire in the comp plan to either allow or restrict something from happening? And that's where this comprehensive plan process is so important, because anybody can sit down and say, well, I don't like this portion of the zoning, or I really like that portion, let's improve or expand it. But without getting a sense of what the community wants, we don't have a robust plan from which we can form these processes and steps forward to a potential future goal. So to date, I mentioned the 2018 timeframe. It was May, I believe, May or June of 2018 that I formed the committee. We are now 3 years into that. I think if you could go back one slide, Ben, or did you jump? Yeah. So we have basically 3 years of almost continuous work. There are currently 10 committee members. There have been a couple of changes in committee members over time. One of our initial, our initial committee chair, Jessica Giles, who was at the time chair of the planning board, she has since become a village trustee. Ben Darfler, who is the current chair of this committee and has shepherded the committee through the lion's share of the work, took over once Jessica announced that she would be running for village trustee. We have several members from the community. A couple have changed over time, but you can see the names on the list. And I do want to thank everyone on the committee for all of their hard work. You see, 3 years of dedicated work, 22 meetings, lots of survey responses to go through, lots and lots of emails and conversation back and forth over various aspects of the survey results and information that was gathered. And I've said before, but I'll say it again, when you form a committee and you ask people to give of their time voluntarily to work on anything, it's always nice when people raise their hand and volunteer, but you never really know what the commitment level is going to be like until you get started. We all know of folks who are happy to volunteer, and we thank them for their, we're glad to have them participate, but it doesn't necessarily lead to a lot of work. I am thrilled with the fact that everyone on this committee has put in what has to be thousands of hours at this point of combined work, combined effort, reviewing documents, giving really thoughtful consideration to all of the topics that have come up. So thank you to everyone who has been or who has and continues to participate on this committee. In terms of timeline, as I say, we began in 2018. We issued an RFP, a request for proposal for external planning services. We received a number of bids from qualified organizations and individuals. And in the winter of 2018, December, January timeframe, we awarded the bid to EDR, Environmental Design and Research out of Syracuse. We're thrilled to have them on board, and I do want to thank everyone at EDR for all of their hard work over the last couple of years, kind of keeping us on track. My hope when it came to outsourcing this was the previous comprehensive plan done in 2006, 2007, adopted in 2008, was a community effort, and there was some guidance from some local folks who had some knowledge of the effort. But because I wanted a more streamlined process, I was hoping to have this done in a 30 to 36 month time frame. I really wanted professional guidance. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We weren't coming up with our very first comprehensive plan. So having professional guidance that said, okay, here is a plan. It is adopted. This is your comprehensive plan. Now we're going to take it section by section and review it and inject any new desires from the community. It was really important, I thought, to have some, for lack of a better word, some professional hand-holding through that process. And so thank you to EDR for doing that for us. We reviewed the 2008 outline and vision, which then led to a crafting and drafting of what might have changed from 08 to present to draft a 2021 outline and vision. And in that process, we began to think in terms of specific village character areas. Although the village is only 1.2 miles square, there are certainly unique areas within the village that maintain their own character. So when people talk about maintaining the character of the village, well, that can mean something very broad, or it could mean something relatively specific, depending on what neighborhood you happen to be walking through at that moment. This past summer, or I'm sorry, rather the summer of 2019, and through the fall of 2019, 2008 goals and strategies were reviewed. There were public information meetings held, as well as public information gathered. Feedback, questions, comments from members of the public as to what they might like to see included, emphasized, or de-emphasized from the previous comprehensive plan. Then last year, something happened last year that still lingers with us, unfortunately, that kind of threw a wrench in our time frame. But I'm pleased to say that again, the commitment of the folks on the CPZR is truly commendable. They adapted quickly to a virtual meeting environment. They didn't do what could easily have been done and said, well, this global pandemic is something that needs to have us put on hold everything we're doing. They didn't say that, and I'm grateful they didn't. And so we continued with stakeholder meetings virtually. Review draft changes were done virtually. Second public meetings in a very comprehensive, no pun intended, community survey was done. And this was all crafted together throughout last year, through the summer and fall of 2020. The draft was completed in the, I believe it was August to September timeframe, maybe a little bit later than that. And then we began the process of submitting this draft to the community. So the draft comprehensive plan that we're going to talk about tonight is actually a version 2.0. It's a revised draft plan that has been available to the community to give input on, and we have received a number of emails with some very good comments, some technical, some proofreading, but also some questions and insightful comments with respect to content. And then both the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Village Planning Board, and the Village Board itself has reviewed this draft for our thoughts, questions, and comments, which gives us our, what I guess I'll call a semi-final draft. There's nothing set in stone until it's adopted, and even then it's a living document. It's not set in stone. But what you're going to look at tonight is a culmination of multiple review processes of the draft plan that was completed late last year. And so with that, I will turn it over to Trustee Ben Darfler, who is the chair of the CPZR. I do want to just one more time say thank you, Ben, for all of your hard work, as well as the hard work of the committee, some of whose members are actually in attendance tonight. It's something that I think we should be and will be proud of, and look forward to where it takes us in the future. So take it away, Ben.
Thank you, Rawdon. Yeah, so I'll just start walking us through kind of highlights of the draft plan. There's really too much in the plan to kind of cover this evening. We do have an executive summary of the whole plan that people can read and review at their own leisure. That's on the village website. But I do want to kind of try and cover the kind of big broad stroke differences to allow people to hone in on where to focus primarily as people dig into the plan a little more deeply, if you so choose, and provide feedback and comment as we continue to go through the process. So to start, we kind of started this whole thing by looking at what we already had, right? We have the 2008 comprehensive plan. In reviewing it, the committee really was very struck by how solid it is. It really is a fantastic document. It gives us a lot to work with. And of course, as Rawdon was saying, things are never static. Things continue to move and shift and change. And so it is time to kind of come back and look at it with fresh eyes. But there was a lot of good pieces to start with. And so this is the 20-year vision from 2008. And we're not going to go through kind of bullet point by bullet point, but serves to show just a little bit of where we were starting. And the vision covers a number of different elements of the village. We've got housing, businesses, green space. And by and large, it touched on a lot of the key themes that are still very relevant to us going forward and for this current revision. But as a committee, we kind of sat with this and thought through it and saw, what, as Rawdon was saying, where do we want to emphasize? Where do we want to add? What do we want to de-emphasize? And so we kind of pulled this into different themes, looking across the 2008 themes and said, where do we want to add? What do we want to kind of massage here for 2021? And the big takeaway, and we'll look at the 2021 vision in a second, is this addition of kind of all the government and education, public health and services pieces that weren't captured in 2008 as directly. We really wanted to make sure, as there's been more and more conversation about what does it look like to have a sustainable and fiscally responsive government? What does it look like to balance that with the services that are provided? And to bring in more around education, which is so crucial to Trumansburg and bringing in younger families and supporting that kind of community. So those were the pieces we wanted to bring in to the draft, into the new vision going forward. So we took that, we started working those in. We also, as a committee, really wanted to focus on a very tight and clear vision. So as you'll see here, the bullet points are a little bit shorter, a little more concise, a little more emphasis on each individual piece. And then at the end, we're also bringing in, especially with the last bullet point, this focus on village government as well as education. And this is the vision that we drafted this now back in 2019. Spent a lot of time on it then, and have been through public information meetings at that time for feedback on this, and have changed it in reaction to some of the comments that we received then. But it was really important to us to get a really clear vision nailed down and reviewed early, because the rest of the plan really does flow from this vision. And so we look at it here, knowing that we've been through this a number of times, a lot of public feedback, and this is the culmination of a lot of work and effort that's gone into that. But that vision, is a good place to start when trying to compare the two documents. What's changed, what's shifted over those the past 10 to 15 years almost. That's a good place to start, kind of looking, comparing and contrasting. And these slides are also on the website as well, for people to kind of sit and digest a little bit more. The other piece that we worked on very early on was the kind of contents, or the table of contents for the plan. And so this is, again, kind of gives you that high level vision of what's the difference, where are we putting more focus, where are we emphasizing, where are we de-emphasizing between the two plans. So again, you'll notice that the big changes are in those areas of government and education, public health and safety. We noticed the transportation wasn't specifically called out, as well as the infrastructure, utilities, and services that we have and experience in the village. And so that kind of led us to this table of contents, as it were, for the 2021 draft. And again, this is another piece that we kind of submitted to the community for feedback at that 2019 public information meeting to hear, were we missing other things? Do we need to focus in different areas? And this has a lot, this really does focus the attention for the rest of the plan. This gives EDR a focus as we move forward through the plan on what's elements to pull information about, to be able to add into the plan. And then as we'll see, and we talk in a minute about goals and strategies and actions, that's where a lot of really the community and committee work comes into play. So the middle pieces of both these comprehensive plans, and really probably most any comprehensive plan, is really your facts and figures. So you pick out your key themes and elements that you want to focus on. But then if you drill into housing, for instance, in the 2021 comprehensive plan, you're going to be looking at your facts and figures of how many houses do we have, how many rentals, how many for sales, all that kind of hard numbers is where we lean on EDR to bring in the information into the comprehensive plan. And you can decide where you want to focus your attention, but at the end of the day, kind of the numbers are the numbers. What's interesting is then when we start talking about, okay, here's where we are, here's the numbers for today. Where do we want to go with this? Where are we looking to move over the next 10 to 20 years? And at the end of each of these sections, there is a little kind of forward-looking, more forward-looking section that the committee spent a lot of time on thinking, where do we want to go, and taking again in that feedback from the rest of the community. And then that's mirrored again in the goals and strategies at the end. And so I think with that, we can talk a little bit about the goals and strategies and actions. This was another piece where the committee spent a lot of time focusing, again, along from hearing, I'll keep reiterating all that feedback from our boards, our department heads, the community, and this is the lived experience of the folks who are on the committee itself. The focus is in the work that we did for the 2021 comprehensive plan is a lot on structure as much as it is substance. In the 2008 plan, there is 29 goals across those 6 different sections that the plan touched on. And they were wonderful goals. And then there was a list of 93 strategies towards the end that again fell somewhat under those goals. But it fell under areas, not specific goals. And so that was one of the first issues we noticed, is it was a little hard to understand as a strategy or an action item came up, what goal was that really trying to forward? And that's important because it helps you kind of clarify what are we trying to really accomplish here? And as we kind of dug through the strategies and the goals and the actions, it felt like we were wanting it to be more actionable. We wanted to have a sense that someone could pick up this document and look through it and really say, aha, we want to go do this or do that. And then have a sense of being able to understand, did we accomplish it or did we not accomplish it? Is it still yet to be done? And so a lot of the focus for the 2021 plan was not just in the substance of the goals, but really clarifying them. So we've got 25 goals across 10 different sections. So, we're looking 2 to 3 goals per section, but then we break that down with strategies underneath and actions underneath that. And it all kind of lines right back up. So you can get a real clear sense of, here's an action, but why are we doing this? What are we hoping to accomplish with it? So if maybe the action item ends up being, doesn't actually get us to the goal that we're looking for, we can adjust, we can reiterate or iterate on it. And if it's ever unclear, we can continue to refer back to those goals and strategies to really understand what are we trying to get here. So I have kind of examples here, from a kind of example of 2008. There's kind of this broad area of economic development. One of the items underneath there was create a program that would encourage Main Street outlets for locally produced goods, which is a wonderful idea, but it's not really clear. Are we trying to bring in more tourists by promoting locally produced goods? Are we trying to provide locally produced goods that help the community with their weekly and monthly needs? What's the outcome here? And it's a little unclear maybe who would even take on such a project. So with the 2021 plan, I pulled an example around stormwater management and drainage. We want to regulate stormwater to help with that goal. And as an action, we want to store a stormwater management plan, and it even references kind of a place to go look for inspiration in the New York State Design Manual around that. It's very clear what we're doing, why we're doing it, what's our desired outcome. And in this case, it doesn't say explicitly, but it's fairly clear, I would say, that this is a village board sort of action to take. And we even do go a bit further. And so in this slide deck, and again, you can look at your own leisure, there's an appendix, and in there is the priority actions that we have. And they're also in the comprehensive plan called out pretty clearly. And those, we took the top 10 to 15 or so actions and went another level deeper and said, who's actually responsible for this work? Is it the village board? Is it the planning board? Is it some other organization? Where might they look for money around it? What's a time frame that we're looking for the completion of the action? So the whole focus was, just kind of keep reiterating, was really on making things clear and actionable so that this becomes a real document that we can use moving forward. It's very clear that who's kind of on the hook for which pieces, and how we might make the most of the efforts that have gone into this so it doesn't kind of go on the shelf and just sit there. We really want to kind of keep reiterating and looking at it and moving the community forward. So that's the very high level. Like I said, it's very difficult to kind of fit everything into a short meeting here. But I do encourage people, if they haven't already looked at it, to take a look at the executive summary, take a look at the appendix. And the appendix here, there's also a list of all the goals from 2008 and from 2021. You can kind of compare and contrast between those. And you can also always pull the 2008 comprehensive plan and the draft and kind of go that extra level deeper to continue to see where we've changed, what the differences have been, and anything that's worth giving feedback to this board. To just cover briefly where we think this might go from here, we have a very tentative adoption timeline at this point, because so much of this depends on what kind of feedback we hear. We're here in July. We're having our first public information meeting. We've started our seeker review. That's an environmental review that's required when adopting a comprehensive plan. And as part of that review, we've also sent this to planning board, to state and county agencies, really anyone who might be potentially impacted or interested in our adoption of a comprehensive plan, to say, this is happening. We're intending to do an environmental review. If you've got any kind of concerns, raise a hand at this point. As we move into August, we'll hold that second information meeting that Roden had mentioned. And we'll continue that environmental review. The assumption with a comprehensive plan is that typically we, as the municipality that's adopting the plan, would run that review. So we don't expect anyone to kind of raise a hand, but we do leave that option possibly open. But in August, the intent is to continue with that review, look through additional areas of the full environmental assessment form, which is how you move through that review. And that lines us up for September to have a public hearing on this comprehensive plan. So anything that people give feedback here in these public information meetings is fantastic. These are a little more informal, a little more Q&A based. The public hearing is really to get specific notes and comments and feedback on the public record for this particular comprehensive plan. And that'll be a time to also have public comment on the environmental review as well. And then this is where things get a little tentative, right? Depends on what kind of feedback we hear tonight in August at that public hearing. If things kind of continue to move forward, we might be in a place to determine the environmental impact in September. Typically with a comprehensive plan, it's rare to see an environmental impact, mostly because the plan doesn't require us to do any specific action. It calls out a bunch of actions, but for each of those actions, we would go through another environmental review should it be warranted. So it typically doesn't require a deeper review for this comprehensive plan. If that continues to move forward in October, we might entertain a vote to think about adopting this plan. So again, there's plenty of time for feedback, for adjustments, but that would be the tentative kind of timeline at this point. And as we go, things will continue to be announced on the village's website, on Facebook, and we'll strive to get as many local news agencies, this can be cajoled into covering more of those updates as well. So that's pretty much all I have for the kind of differences and highlights of the new comprehensive plan. Everything here is available at this URL, which is just an easier way to get to the website and go to the Comprehensive Plan and Revision Committee's subpage there. Either way works. And if there's more public comment from people watching later, or people have an idea after this evening, the email to send us is publiccomment@trumansburg-ny.gov. So people can send whatever they like there. I think with that, we'll open it up for questions, comments, feedback, unless Roden, you have anything else to add towards the end here.
No, we have several members of the public present, or a handful of members of the public present. So I'd like to leave as much time as we need for any questions, comments, input that anyone would like to contribute. No, just jump in. We're a small group.
Can you just clarify? I think I know the answer, but not everybody might know it. When you talk about the vote on the adopting the plan, you're talking about the village trustees, right? It's not a referendum. Is that correct?
That's correct. So as with all local laws, or this isn't technically a local law, but it has a similar weight in terms of process. With any legislation, essentially, it is a vote of the village board alone. There is a stipulation. So one of the reviews that Ben mentioned was what's referred to as a 239, I believe that's right, a 239 review. That's a section, I believe, of general municipal law, which requires the comprehensive plan be submitted to, among other agencies, the county planning department. If the county planning department were to weigh in negatively, they were to say, for any reason, we don't like this comprehensive plan, we don't think you should adopt it, then it would require a majority plus one vote. So 4 of the 5 trustees would have to vote in favor of it in order to adopt it. I'm not aware that that's happened any time in the last couple of decades anywhere in upstate New York, but it's certainly possible. But the short answer to your question, Kathy, is yes, it is a vote of the village board. There are actually very few things that are subject to voter referendum. So this would certainly not be one of those few things. And I would just add, in terms of the adoption timeline, I am hopeful to have this adopted this fall. Certainly, if there's a lot of public feedback to the contrary, if there's something that, with all of the many layers of review, I think it's unlikely that something substantive would have been missed, but I won't say anything's impossible. So unless something like that were to occur, that would require us to go back and take several months to revise or rewrite something. I would like to see this adopted this fall, because then the next step is there are some aspects of the zoning ordinance which would need to be changed based on some of the input and construct of the new comp plan, as well as some other areas of the zoning ordinance that have just proven to be problematic from a practical and enforcement standpoint over the last many years. So I would like to continue that process with an eye towards having the zoning revised in 2022. So kind of we can take care of some of that important work. Anything else? Comments of any type? Going once. Well, I will just say thank you to everyone who did attend tonight. The next public information meeting will be on Tuesday, August the 17th. So just about 3 weeks from tonight, Tuesday, August the 17th. Again, we're planning to hold it at the Trumansburg Farmers Market. Hopefully the weather will oblige. We will have public address systems so folks can bring lawn chairs, get comfortable, bring dinner. It will be at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, August 17th. So anyone who's either watching this after the fact or watching online right now, if you'd like to attend in person, that would be the evening that we're going to hold that. Same content, same format, and as much time as we need to answer any and all questions or take comments that folks might have. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Just to reiterate what Ben said, any additional comments or questions, please do send them our way.
All righty, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night, everybody.